This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome in to Wanna Bet, the gambling podcast here on Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Look, it's April in the D as we know it. It's April. It's one of the best months in all of sports. The Masters just wrapped up. We have the NBA playoffs. We have the NHL playoffs. Major League Baseball is getting into the swing of things. And the best place for you to put all your action on all of these sports is mybookie.ag. MyBookie is the perfect home for all of your April sports fun. They have something for everyone, and that includes baseball fan. That includes basketball fan. That even includes hockey fan. MyBookie has been in business for years, and the best part is they pay out fast when you win. I'm talking 48 hours fast. Quick. Visit mybookie.ag and deposit with the promo code DSP. You will get a 50% sign-up bonus. That again is promo code DSP, and we are going to match your deposit 50% up to $1,000. With MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid. I've been using them for years. It's a great site for all of your actions, some of the best odds that you will find anywhere on the internet, and that is mybookie.ag. One more time, promo code DSP. All right, right off the top of the show today, I want to dedicate some time to not talk about bets that I placed, to not talk about games that were played, or not even to talk about games that will be played. By the way, riding an insane hot streak in the NBA playoffs. I will get to those in a little bit. But I want to start with just the bet that kills me every time I get a little bit of temptation, every time I get fooled by a big number at the end of a long bet, and I think, this really could pay off this time, and I don't realize exactly that I'm just lighting my money on fire, that they're beating just the dog shit out of me with this bet that is so unbelievably, obviously a sucker bet, and yet I still play it, and that, of course, is the parlay. And I don't know, I guess I have to explain what the parlay is because I don't know everyone's experience that listens to this with sports betting. If you are just getting into sports betting, if you're just interested in the culture of sports betting. But the parlay is simply you make a series of bets, and let's say you make 6 bets and you win the first one, so you go all in on the second one. Let's say you bet with $100 and you win the first one and you go all in on the second, and then you win the second and you go all in on the third, and then you win the third and you go all in on the fourth, and so on and so forth. If you did that with $100 and you just kept going, you would win $6,400 if you went all in on every one of those bets. So a parlay is if you bet all 6 of those at the same time, you bet $100, and all 6 outcomes have to be true together, you would win $6,400. So it would depend on some of the odds and how it extends out, but in theory, that's what it is. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Vegas loves when people bet parlays. The reason why is because, look, when you need all of these results to come true, like sitting down at a table and hitting 6 consecutive blackjack hands is nearly unheard of. It's happened to me, which was one of the more incredible things in my life, but I didn't go all in on each hand. And that's where, like, going all in on a sports bet and having all 6 outcomes come true is unheard of. I've placed a couple NBA wagers. I think I have, like, I think on the week so far, I'm 14-4 in the NBA, and those 4 losses have killed all of my parlays. And that's where, look, basketball, I'm looking at this from 2000 to 2014, Nevada's house win percentage on all of these different bets. So basketball from 2008 to 2014, the house won 5.35% on every bet placed. Football, they won 4.55% on every bet placed. And baseball, they won 4.04% on every bet placed. There's nothing here for hockey. Hockey's just really, it's more of a niche gambling sport, and it's just not gambled on to the extent that basketball, football, and baseball are. So no higher than 5.35% on individual bets in any of these sports. Parlays, the house won 31.47% of all of the money gambled. 31.5%. That's a sucker bet. That's how they trick you. Now it gets worse. You want to bet on Bovada. You want to bet on MyBookie. You want to bet somewhere online. Well, the odds on parlays on these sports betting sites are typically worse than they would be even in Vegas, to the point where if you're betting a parlay on a sports betting site, the typical max profit is about $4,500 on a $100 bet. Not a lot of people are swinging around $100 bets on sites like this. Now, I know some people gamble differently than others. Some people like to really sweat. Some people, like, a bet is a bet is a bet to me. It's one thing where I get a little annoyed where people make fun of somebody because they only bet $10 a game. If that's what you can afford, that's what you can afford. And a bet is a bet is a bet. Whatever is valuable to you is your value. Like that, it shouldn't matter how much you're betting. So again, it's where, like, you bet $5 on a plus 4,500, you're getting 45 to 1. That's $225 on a $5 bet. That's fantastic, right? The return on investment there is incredible. The odds that you win that bet, slim to none. And that's where you just, if you put even these little parlays in, which is what I do, I'll put very low bet value parlays in because, look, if I'm going to put $5 in and win $225, that's excellent. And if it just so happens that, otherwise, what's the worst thing that happened? I lost $5. But again, I just want to go through it because it's a sucker bet. It's the biggest sucker bet in sports betting. And yet it's one of the most popular forms of bets, the parlay. And I've seen them hit big, and I've also seen people lose big on them. And it's where I just think that when Vegas sells all these parlay tickets and you have fools drunkenly stumbling around Fremont Street or up the Strip and they're showing all these long parlay tickets. I had a guy come up to me when I was in Vegas, and he had a parlay that would have netted him like something in the range of $10,000, and he has this long parlay, and he had 7 plays on it. He had one play that was wrong, and it was I think he had Montana to match Michigan, like to cover 15 points. And it was the only one that was wrong. Michigan just kicked the shit out of Montana, if you remember. This was in this year's March Madness tournament. And so he had a 7-way parlay. He would have won 10 grand, and he lost it because Montana didn't cover. And that's where it's like, dude, Vegas, you're helping build the casinos. Like, when it comes to the sports betting sites, you're keeping their lights on when you put these parlays in. You want to, like, you have to view betting, if you really want to be serious about it, as a form of income. And I understand most people are recreational. I'm a recreational bettor. And it's not necessary. Like, I'm not a professional gambler. This isn't where I make my money. It's fun on the side. I do well in it. So it's something that's fun for me, but it's not my way of making money. That's where, like, I'm okay with putting a little bit of money in a parlay, but I do have to understand it's a sucker bet, and they will suck you dry, for lack of a better term, if you bet these often. And sometimes they work. I've had a couple that have paid me very handsomely, but when they don't, you really are just taking your money and you're lighting it on fire. And I know you look at sports bets, and since everything comes in at minus 110, which obviously you have to bet $110 to win 100 with those odds, people look at it and go, well, I need to win like 4 out of 6 just to win some money. And I go, well, I am winning 4 out of 6. Like, I look at these bets that I'm making and I'm putting them in a parlay, and I'm like, I am winning 4 out of 6, but I'm not winning any money because I keep putting them in a parlay. I would be up if I just wouldn't bet the parlay. So I think that's just, maybe it's me venting about my losses because I keep getting tempted into these ridiculous long odds parlay bets. But hey, I'm on one of the hotter streaks I've ever been on in the NBA. So I think it's just time for me to get out of the parlay bets and start betting straight up, which I would advise anyone who is getting into sports betting, anyone who is listening to this, I would advise to do the same thing. Stay away from the parlay. It's robbing you blind, and people aren't even aware of it. It's one of the sadder things when people are like all in on these parlay bets. They can think they can win hundreds or thousands of dollars, and just stay away. It's tricked me. It tricks me, but stay away. Avoid it. That's what I'm at with the parlay. The other things I wanted to talk about today, I want to get to the NBA. Before I do, I just want to go over like the nature of offshore sports betting to begin with and how I got into it. It's one of those things where I think Michigan is a silly state sometimes. I think you look at what happened with the Hazel Park Raceway, and you look at the way that the state kind of just put handcuffs on the entire industry. You know, they struggled to put slots together. They struggled with the maintenance of the place. They struggled with upkeep. There were all these rumors of crooked ownership that were rigging races and things like that. And I think the state had a really good opportunity with the Hazel Park Raceway, with places like Northville Downs, really with thoroughbred horse racing as a whole. And they just kind of screwed it all up. And it's the same thing that they do with sports betting, where they have these archaic policies that there's no way. Like, I have a feeling that it's going to be legalized here, but I have no idea when. I couldn't even begin to give you a timetable. And it's kind of sad for me because there's, 15 some odd states that have now legalized sports betting. They've raced to get it done. You look at New Jersey, Atlantic City now can rival Vegas because they also have that aspect. You know, they don't even necessarily have the weather or the desert or like the long-term appeal. But again, Atlantic City, a gambling hub, and now in a state that legally will allow you to gamble, has the opportunity to rival Vegas. You know, you look in New Jersey, right outside of New York, the FanDuel Sportsbook. The DraftKings comes with a sportsbook. So it's opportunity for a lot of companies to come in, to build these books, to build these hotels even. Like, that's the one thing that also comes with it. You know, you look in downtown Detroit right now, they have the boutique hotels going up, the Shinola Hotel, all these things. But they aren't doing anything as far as, look, you already have 3 state-of-the-art casinos. Greektown's an excellent casino. MGM's an excellent casino. Motor City is an excellent casino. All 3 of them are excellent. If you legalize sports betting, you put sports books in these casinos, it's just another reason for people to get out, stay in the hotel, for people to visit. It's another thing for people to do, and it's a way to get income for the state. I don't understand why they do things so backwards, especially, and I think, again, the Hazel Park Raceway is one of the shining examples of how this state has completely mishandled the sports betting or the race betting industry. Again, just failing to put slots in place there, failing to maintain, and then eventually the closure. Just, it kind of goes back on the state and how they handicapped thoroughbred horse racing so severely. And that's just, I think now I'm worried about them doing that with sports betting. And like, I know it's legal federally, or it's a states' rights issue instead of a federal issue, which it always should have been. But I don't know if Michigan's going to get it right. I don't know if Michigan is ever going to go that route and actually legalize. So that's kind of where I started looking. How do I get my fix, rather? And again, I do this recreationally, and so it's not like I'm an addict or anything, but it was like, I enjoy betting on these games. You know, you place bets with friends on a game where you're like, hey, $50 either way. And it's fun because there's like the friendly rivalry there too. But one thing you don't think about is when you make those bets, you don't get odds. And when you don't get odds, you get a worse pay. Like, say you're taking an underdog at 1-to-1 odds. And it's something I have to feel bad about, but when Floyd Mayweather played Conor McGregor, people wanted to make bets with me because so many people were riding Conor McGregor for whatever reason. And I was like, you guys really want to make 1-to-1 odds bets on this? Like, I had people betting me $50, $100 on Conor McGregor to beat Floyd Mayweather. And I'm like, I'm perfectly fine with making these bets, even if Mayweather loses, because I would never get these odds anywhere else. Like, Mayweather was minus 1,000 at one point in that fight. And I'm getting 1-to-1. I'm like, yeah, this is a no-brainer. But that's what people don't think about when they're like, well, I just make friendly wagers with my friends, and that's how I get my sports. But you don't get odds. And that's kind of where I had to jump myself in and go, if I'm going to bet sports, I have to bet with a book. I have to bet with a place that will give me odds on these. And bookies can be hard to find, hard to come by. They can also be a bit of a mess. I know plenty of people who have gotten in trouble that route, and so I decided to look offshore, and I looked into the legality of some of these places, and it's kind of, I don't want to say it's outright illegal. That's what makes it sort of interesting. That's what made it interesting to me. My initial concern was like, this is illegal. And then I started looking into it more because it's offshore, it's more unregulated, and it's not necessarily illegal, but it isn't strictly speaking legit, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The best thing I can say, though, is my experience betting online with whatever user I've used. My bookie has been amazing, has been outstanding. And there have been instances on Twitter, especially recently, where places like MyBookie have come under fire. And kind of what the whole point that I'm trying to get at here is my experience with these different websites, with these offshore betting services, has been spectacular. I think they offer a really good service at a really accessible way. And I personally find it incredibly enjoyable. I find it to be, and I have the payout structure is a little funky. I get my payout in Bitcoin, and then I turn that into dollars because I found that it limits fees the most. But it is just, that's one thing I'll say is these books online, the fees to come out can be expensive. But if you have a Bitcoin wallet, which is really easy to set up, it makes things a lot easier. So I guess I just want to like calm people if they're out there thinking, is this legal? Am I going to get in trouble? Or if they're out there thinking, is this legit? Will I get paid if I win? Whatever it might be. Yes. In the short, yes. I have had nothing but good experiences with any site that I've used. And again, setting up a Bitcoin wallet was one of made the payout system much, much easier. I see a lot of people who are like, well, look, I got to pay this fine just to get my money out. And if you're not super techie, I get setting up a Bitcoin wallet can be really hard. I use an app. It's called Coinbase, and it's available on iPhone. This is 100% legal, by the way. Available on iPhone, Android, I'm sure. And you can set up a Bitcoin wallet right there. All you have to do is copy and paste the link, and they will send your money to you in Bitcoin. And then all you have to do on Coinbase is literally hit a button that says sell, and they will give you 1-to-1 Bitcoin to dollar. Not 1-to-1, but you know what I mean. Like they won't take any fee out of it. And so that's the way I did it. It happened in less than a day, and I had my money. I've had more than a good number of experiences using these websites, so I just want to ease anyone's concerns. Okay, I want to get into the NBA, some of my best bets, some of my worst bets, and I do want to say the Clippers got blown out in Game 1 of their series with the Warriors, and I looked at Game 2, and for whatever reason, I saw the line was plus 15. I almost took the Clippers money line just as like a flyer. I ended up taking the Clippers plus 15. And if anyone watched that game, that's one of the best basketball games you will see, especially in the postseason. With the Warriors up 31 points in the third quarter, the Clippers came back and won the game on the back of Lou Williams, on the back of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, my godson, and on the back of guys like Landry Shamet, who hit one of the more clutch late game threes you will ever see in playoff basketball. That game was incredible. It showed there's a crack in the armor of the Warriors to me. It showed that there is value in betting against them. And I think it showed me that I got on here a couple weeks ago and I ran through the odds of the NBA, who has the best chance to win it all. And I know I said like getting Boston out of the East is one of the more valuable picks because of that plus 450. I know I also said don't bother betting on the NBA championship because the Warriors are going to win it at minus 200. After what I saw in that Clippers game, I don't know that that's true anymore. And that's where I look at the Warriors and the fact that they have to go a second round against the Houston Rockets. I really don't know that this is the Warriors here. People will say a lot about Boogie and getting his left quad torn. He's out probably for the season. People might say a lot as far as how that's going to impact their chances. I don't think it really does. I actually think their best lineup all year has been without him. I think their best lineup also in the playoffs has been without him. Obviously, you lose a center like that, it kills your depth. They haven't been wanting to play Andrew Bogut a ton. He had 2 minutes in the first game. Boogie went down. He had 18 minutes in game 2. So look for Bogut to be in the 22 to 23 minute range. But he's a little older now. And then you look at what they can do at center. Look, you can't play Draymond Green at the center position for 42 minutes. And so I look at this team now and I wonder, really, where do they go? You know, with Jerebko getting 4 minutes, with guys like Alfonso McKinney getting 3 minutes. Their depth now without Boogie, it cost them depth to get him. Let me put it this way. We looked at the Warriors this year. I looked at them all year long. I said they're still the best starting 5 in basketball. They still have the best lineup in basketball in the Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Andre Iguodala, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, small ball Hamptons 5 lineup, best lineup in basketball. I also looked at this team and I said, look, their 6th man being Kevon Looney is not ideal. Like Andrew Bogut needing 16 minutes, and they just picked him up. You have Quinn Cook coming off the bench for 14, 15 minutes. Quinn Cook's a fine player, but he's like, to have these guys as depth guys, Sean Livingston, again, fine player, but they're lacking the depth that they used to have. And when they had Pat McCaw, when they had David Lee, when they had guys like that coming off the bench. And that's where I think without that depth, the cracks in the armor are starting to show. And now that they don't have Boogie, they have even less depth. And yeah, you can go back to the Hamptons 5, but again, the rotations are going to now be shorter. And I think that could be problematic for this team when you get into a series with the Rockets. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think the Clippers can beat the Warriors. I am going to say I think the Rockets can do it. You know, the Rockets got within 30 minutes of doing it a year ago. And now it's at a point where Chris Paul's healthy, Clint Capella's healthy, James Harden is playing the best basketball of his entire career, which is outrageous because he won the MVP a year ago, and he just gets better. And now, you know, I think they might actually be able to overcome the flaws in Mike D'Antoni's system and beat the Warriors in a 7-game series. Again, if you're betting against the Warriors, you're betting against the house. And so it's always a risk, but the value in betting against them this year, I think, is undeniable at this point, especially after they gave up game 1. Last night, the Raptors came out and absolutely throttled the Magic, which to me was no surprise. I looked at the series that started 1-0 for the upset seeds. You know how Brooklyn beat Philly, Orlando beat Toronto, the Spurs beat the Nuggets, and I thought, which series gives me fright? The Spurs Nuggets, I always picked the Spurs. Same thing in the Nets and the Sixers. I didn't always pick the Nets, but the Nets, I think, actually match up with the Sixers guards really, really well. And I think they hold an advantage, to be honest. And that's where I looked at those two series and I thought, those two teams are in trouble. Now, I don't know that the Sixers lose. I think the Sixers win a series in 6 or 7 games. The Spurs, I think, win. The Magic, I always knew were going to get flat. You know, you come out, you get 25 points from DJ Augustine, including a game-winning 3 with like 3 seconds left on the clock. You can't bank on that to be consistent. You can't bank on that to be the way you win games. Like, it's just not going to happen like that. So I look at this series, and I think it's virtually over. I think that, like, 1-1, the Raptors might as well be up 2-0. I don't know that the Magic are going to get another game out of this series. But I look at Spurs Nuggets last night. 105-114 was the final. And this is another one where, look, I look at the Spurs late in this game, and they had a lead. They had a lead late, 105-103. They had a fairly big lead at some points. They were up 10 points in the fourth quarter. I look at this game, I look at this Spurs team, and I look at the Nuggets team, and I look at the way the Nuggets won this game. And it was on the back of Jamal Murray, who had 19 points on 8 of 8 shooting in the fourth quarter. Again, these are things that you can't rely on to happen on a night in, night out basis. It's great for Jamal Murray. When he's cooking, it's incredible to watch. But you can't rely on him to not miss a shot in the fourth quarter of games in the playoffs every single game. That's the only reason the Nuggets won this game. Otherwise, the Spurs win. Pop getting a technical because the ref missed him trying to get a timeout, not ideal. And again, that's a reason why the Spurs lost as well. But don't get it twisted. Jamal Murray's not doing that again. And that's so I still see the value in picking the Spurs even to win the series, if you can find a bet for it. And then Thunder Blazers, this series is all but over. I think it's absolutely incredible. We're going to look back and realize that Billy Donovan has wasted 2 seasons of having Russell Westbrook and Paul George. Russell Westbrook is horrible. Like, I'm just going to flat out say it. When we get to the playoffs, this guy is awful. He shot 5 of 20 last night. That is unacceptable to shoot 5 of 20. It's even more unacceptable that Billy Donovan puts him in that position to be doing that. You have plays, when you run plays for Steven Adams, he's a bucket in the paint. You have Paul George having one of the better nights of his last couple months, and you allow Russell Westbrook to take the floor and shoot the ball 20 times. Here's the other part of Russell Westbrook's game. He damn near got a triple-double. Of course he did. 14 points, 11 assists, and 9 rebounds. He has turned the triple-double into one of the most inflated stats in sports. It is completely meaningless when Russell Westbrook gets a triple-double because more often than not, it ends up in a not win. That offense needs to go through Paul George. It needs to go through Steven Adams in this series. I don't think Billy Donovan makes those changes. So that series, to me, all but over. You want to start hedging yourself for Portland in the second round. Portland, to me, is, again, if the Spurs come out, if Denver comes out, I think Portland can beat them both. I think the way that Damian Lillard is playing basketball right now, when that series gets matched up, when you have an opportunity to get Portland over Denver, if Portland's a dog in that series, bet it. It's a no-brainer. It's absolute value. And that's one thing I will say. I think the way this team is playing is amazing. I think the way Damian Lillard is playing is amazing. I think he's out to get to a Western Conference Finals. They're doing it for Jennifer, as CJ McCollum says. So I love what I'm seeing out of that team. Celtics Pacers. Celtics are 7.5 point favorites at home tonight. The total 204. If you listen to this before this game tips off, I don't know when the guys over at DSP are going to get this thing out, but if you do listen to this before this game tips off, bet the Celtics to cover, bet the under. It's easy as pie in my mind. Like, this game feels like an ATM. I think the Celtics win this game in the same way they won the first one, like a 95 to 85 style of game. They're going to win by 10 points. They're going to keep it under 200, and that's that. As for Bucks Pistons, I don't even want to talk about Game 1. Game 1 was so stupid. The Bucks are a 15-point favorite. Bet them. See if you can find an alternate line where you can get them for 30. I'm not even kidding. Like, see if you can find an alternate line where you can get them for 30 with high-value odds, because I would do it in a heartbeat. I tried to do it for Game 1. When I found out that Blake was out, I started looking for alternate lines to see if I could find him at minus 30. And guess what they won by? 36. I'm telling you, I'm on fire. And that's where I look tonight. Bet the Bucks minus 30 if you can find it. Bet them minus 15. Absolutely. Like, hammer it. Jazz Rockets. I thought this would be a close series, but now it just feels like a horrible matchup. So the Rockets laying 7. I think, again, just bet it. The total at 213 scares me a little bit. I didn't even touch the Pistons-Bucks total because it's 213. The Bucks might get there themselves. Rockets-Jazz 213 scares me. I think what the game the other night was 122 to 90, so that comes in at 212. So it's not like that number feels like about where it should be, but it could go either side of it. So it's almost like you're flipping a coin, which is why I usually stay away from totals like that where they're not outright. That's either going to get there or it's not. The Warriors and Clippers have been playing high totals. Tomorrow night, their total is at 237. The first game, I bet the over on 234, and I think it was about 222 was the final game total. The next game, I didn't touch it at 234, and it went to like 250 something and 260 something. And now they're at 237. And again, this is an over. This is a total that feels like it's exactly where it should be. And it could go 20 points over as easily as it could go 20 points under. I think the fact that we're playing this game in LA and not in Golden State makes me more inclined to take the under. I think LA is going to be able to dictate the pace of this game. But one thing that's interesting about what they've been doing, they've been trying to run with this team. And a lot of people will tell you it's dumb to try and run with the Warriors. After the Clippers did it the other night, I think they're going to continue to do it. And if they do come out just running, it's going to go over 237. So it's kind of a judgment call. I don't know if I'll touch that game. But again, the total's a big number. When it's big like that, you can almost always find value on the under. Or on the over, excuse me. So it might be worth your while to throw something on the over there. As far as the rest of the Nets-Sixers series goes, the Sixers are a 3-point favorite going into Brooklyn. The total's 227.5. I think Brooklyn covers, and I think they go over. I think Brooklyn takes a 2-1 lead in this series. And I know that Philly looked really good in Game 2 when they just came out and flattened the Nets. I think the Nets playing their first playoff game in Brooklyn in years plays huge. The crowd's going to be electric. And I still think just from a guard play standpoint, Ben Simmons can't stand up to what the Nets offer. I think defensively it causes problems because Simmons doesn't really know where to play and Brett Brown doesn't really know where to play him. Nuggets and Spurs, totals 212. The Spurs are laying 3 points. Again, I told you when I talked about the game last night, the Spurs are winning the series. I think they might sweep. So give me the Spurs laying 3, and I'll take the under on that game. Again, last night was 115-104 final. That's 119 exact, or 219 exactly. And we've got the number for tomorrow coming in at 219. So that's just kind of where I look at that game, and I think, or at 212, I look at that game and I just think I think it's going to go under. I think it'll be more similar to Game 1, where it'll be played in like the 190 range. I don't know that number hits 200. And then for the final game, that's their series of games that still has odds listed. Celtics-Pacers, Game 3, there's nothing for it. 8:30 Friday night. These are the Friday night games. Toronto and the Magic. Toronto's laying 4 points on the road. Total here is 210. I'll take Toronto to cover, and I'll take the over. I know what I said with Brooklyn is just how long it's been since they've had a playoff game. The fan base in Orlando isn't exactly as into it as Nets fans, and I just think Toronto is that much better. If Kyle Lowry scores literally a point, I just think Orlando has no chance. The fact that he went literally scoreless in Game 1 is a huge factor for why the Raptors lost that game. Especially when you consider they lost it on a buzzer beater by 2 points. And then we got Portland and OKC. OKC's laying 7.5, a point total, 221.5. I think the Blazers cover that easily, and I also think that goes over. Again, I don't see how the Thunder really come back and win a game in this series. I don't see how Billy Donovan's game plan is going to change enough for them to play well enough to win. And I just think the way Portland's playing right now, the confidence that Damian Lillard's playing with, I know it's different when he's not home because it's harder for him to step into 40-footers and then feed off of the crowd. But the way that he's playing at this moment and the way that CJ McCollum is stepping up for his team, the way that they're all kind of rallying around not having Nurkic, and the way that OKC just seems to get lost late in games, I think Portland goes into Oklahoma City and covers that 7.5, no problem. That's Wanna Bet. I think this is the 4th episode of Wanna Bet. So thanks for listening. I will see you next week with more NBA recap, more picks. Can't wait to get to it. Thanks.